Hello, I'm William Harris, Deputy Director of the FDR Presidential Library and Museum, and welcome tonight to a screening of Soul Witness, as well as a conversation with the director and filmmaker, Harvey Bravman, who we're very fortunate to have tonight. This is part of the FDR Library and Roosevelt Institute and Morgenthau Holocaust Collections Project 2021 virtual conference examining American responses to the Holocaust, digital possibilities. Only this evening, only registered attendees are able to participate in discussions or ask questions. So please type your question into the Q&A, and our moderator will coordinate that with us after the program. So there's a really basic code of conduct. Dialogue must be civil, respectful, and focused on Holocaust studies and digital humanities. Personal attacks, profanity, or hate speech will not be tolerated, and violators will be blocked, and any links or content not directly related to the conference will be removed. Please be sure to stay after the film. It'll run about 63 minutes, and we will speak with Harvey about the film and its impact and its importance now more than ever. We hope you enjoy the film, and we'll see you in about an hour.
We thought that the Germans are trying to scare us. We thought that the trucks are loaded with mummies, with mannequins, one on top of the other, a couple of hundred on each truck. But these were not mannequins, these were dead people.
They took a lot of people, Jewish people, and they made them big holes, graves. Later, after they finished, they told them to lay down in the graves. The same people, what they dig. Other people came, they took the dirt and buried them alive. The ground was going up and down, up and down.
And I see this until today. I see the trucks moving, and I see the dead people on the trucks.
Was that the worst thing you saw? The buried alive,
Yeah,
the people?
this was bad. This was very, very bad. The ground was going up and down, till they died.
Do you still think about that today?
All the time. Every single day you have to eat. A lot of time I dream. I cannot sleep. I cannot sleep. I cannot sleep.
And my father, he kept on saying to me, remember, remember my son, you must live. You must survive. You must survive. And I'll be with you. I'll be with you. You're going to find your brothers. You're going to find your mothers. I swore after my father's death, no matter what, I must survive and to take revenge. I must. And I did everything possible to survive. And I survived, I did. And I walked with my head up, and I thought, now I am going to kill. I'm going to kill these Nazi schweins. These are not human beings, this is not civilized people. These are murderers, Nazi murderers. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't kill anybody. I couldn't do anything. I couldn't harm anybody.
What was it like falling in love in a period when death was a greater threat than happiness? Could you talk a little bit about that?
My husband, when he was 19 or 20 years, he went to the army. And when he went to the army, he told me when he's going to come back, he's falling in love with me. He's in love with me. He told me then. No, I didn't make nothing of it. I didn't think then to fall in love. It was a war. It was really bad. I said, listen, this is not a time to fall in love. I really don't want to fall in love because it's not a good time. He said, what do you mean it's not a good time? Love is love. Bad time, good time. As long we be together, that's what matters. And as far, I didn't want it, and I didn't want it, and I fall in love with him. I fall in love. And then times got bad. And one day, my husband came in and he said he's going to go to the partisans with his brothers. If I want to come, I can come. No, not my mother. They don't going to accept my mother there.
Now, how old was your mother at this time?
And my mother was about 42 then.
42.
Yeah. And I said, no, I'm not going to leave my mother by herself. No way. You have your 3 brothers. I give you your freedom. You go. You go. And I'm going to stay with my mother. And the next night, we parted. We said goodbye to each other. We promised each other to come back to Varzin. If we survive, to come back to the city so we can fight each other. And who survived should tell the whole story, just the way it happened. And I was pregnant. I was pregnant.
Did he know that? Did you tell him?
He knew. He knew. The screaming and the yelling, if children were crying, they were beaten. And the mothers and the fathers couldn't do nothing. This is a terrible thing. For parents to see your children get beaten or killed, or the children see the parents get killed and beaten, and you cannot do a thing. I don't know if somebody doesn't experience this. Even I say the story, I think I still don't say it right, because you really cannot express yourself how bad this was, how terrible this was. It's no words you really can say what they did to us, what they took away from us. But one time you have your family, so much love in the family. Okay, not everybody was rich. No, we had so much love from our family, from the parents, from the grandparents, cousins, uncles. I mean, I had maybe 100 cousins, uncles, aunts. Our family was very big, from my father's side, from my mother's side. And here, I'm just all by myself, all alone with my mother. And I tried to talk to my mother. It was very hard to talk because your tongue is dry, you're all dry, you have no strength even to say something. Now I tried to my mother to say, Ma, if the German's gonna kill me, don't cry. It's good. I'm gonna feel very good. I really tell you, Ma, I'm gonna feel good. I'm gonna go. That is my brother. I be with my whole family. I don't have to suffer no more. I can't take it. I can't take the suffering. It's too much. Not just what I suffer, just to look around me. Everybody is suffering. It's a world of suffering. So my mother squeezed my hand. She couldn't even talk. She said, don't worry, my child. Everything gonna be okay. Everything gonna be okay. I said, good, if you think like this, good. I was very worried for my mother. I don't know, I didn't worry so much for myself. I worried for my mother. I loved my mother so much.
The day before Rosh Hashanah, which is the Jewish New Year, 1944, in one of the barracks, I don't know which one, there was a group of Jewish boys from the town of Kovno, I think. And the Germans, always for a Jewish holiday, they tried to make the life of Jews even more bitter than it was already. So they claimed that there was measles going around. And they took down the numbers of people, identification of. So they took those boys, the numbers, and my mother came that evening to the wire fence to see my father and my brother. And my mother asked my brother, did they take down your number? And my brother didn't answer at all. And he was 9 years old at the time, because he was born in 1935. And he just threw his piece of bread that he got to my mother over the fence, and he said, you take it. I won't need it anymore. And he ran away. And on the eve of Rosh Hashanah, they took a truck full of boys, including my brother, and they put him on the truck, and the truck went in the direction of the crematorium.
I don't remember, because we was marching day and night. The meantime, I ate my belt. I had a leather belt. And we stopped for night in a clover field. And I know the clover is not poisonous. I want to have my system keep going. It's a little bit hazy, the whole thing's for me, but I think it was in the fourth day. two twin brothers who went to the same high school I went. I know them. One of them couldn't walk anymore, just collapsed, and the brother went to help him up. But the guards who was with us, their job was to shoot everybody who couldn't walk. And one of the guards get over there and shoot both of them. And after this incident, not to maybe 10, 15 minutes after that, I fell on my knees. And I got real mad. I'm not 20 years old yet. I didn't hurt anybody. I didn't do anything. I'm just too young to die. And I got up and I kept going.
Unless there's something you'd like to add, well, thank you very much for coming in.
You're welcome. Nothing is coming to my memory now.
Well, we appreciate it very much, and I thank you again.
I'm glad to tell that other people will be able to hear these stories. Not too many people in my age are now alive, and shortly it will be no people that went through this. And it is good that these stories don't die, that somebody will be able to hear them.
Well, thank you for staying with us tonight for the question and answer with Harvey Bravman. Programs such as this are so important, as that testimony just evidence so powerful, and we couldn't do it without the support of so many people like George and Douglas Krupp, who have helped make this night possible. Harvey, welcome. And how did this film come to be?
So the film, the idea for the film came in the 1980s. Brookline, Massachusetts is borders on Boston, high Jewish population, and in the 1980s and before, there were a lot of Holocaust survivors that were living there, and if there was this sort of perfect storm came together to produce these testimonies. At the time, Boston was deciding how it was going to memorialize the Holocaust, and it had decided to put up a physical structure, and the people of Brookline, who were led by a Holocaust survivor from France, Regina Barshak, and Leon Satinstein, and the film's dedicated to those two individuals. He was a liberator. He had witnessed the liberation of Dachau as a 27-year-old intelligence officer for the United States Army. And so Facing History and Ourselves, which was an organization that's in many communities across the world, and the Fortunoff video archives for Holocaust testimony located at Yale University. First, Fortunoff decided they were the first organization to start doing video testimonies, and Facing History and Ourselves was this worldwide organization, was founded and had its start in Brookline. So they, as a group, they decided that they would, Brookline would be one of the communities that would help out Fortunoff and collect these testimonies. And the people in Brookline had decided that the testimonies that were going to be the foundation for a living memorial that was going to be based on these testimonies. For reasons, some of them are hard to explain. Some of them, I guess, are easy. Leon and Regina were getting older. When it took 6 years to collect all of the testimonies, most of them were done in 1990, 1991, and 1992. And they didn't know what to do with all of this footage. It's 90 hours of Holocaust testimony footage. So this idea of a living memorial, I think, probably sounded great at that time, but it was such an effort just to get these testimonies that about 75% of them were shared with Fortunoff, and all of them were put in this metal closet. And they stayed in the metal closet for over 20 years until I found out about them through the diversity director for the town of Brookline. And
so these tapes were there with probably in some ways forgotten, and you found out about them just by accident.
The person who Dr. Lloyd Gillenow is his name, and he's currently the chief diversity officer for the town of Brookline, and he was starting his job. He's the first person for the town that has that title, and they put him in a room, and there were things from someone else that had worked there, and one of them was this big metal freestanding closet. And when he opened it up, there were these about 140, they're called 3/4-inch pneumatic tapes. That was what they would use like in access stations in the 70s and 80s and stuff. And they were just sitting there. And there were people's names on them and crew members written. And he did a lot of digging around, and he learned from these paperwork that it, things, and you can imagine small municipalities, told him that they were Holocaust survivors, and these were their testimonies. And the person who conducted the testimonies, Lawrence Langer, is considered by many to be many consider him the world's foremost authority on Holocaust testimonies. And these were his first video interviews of Holocaust survivors.
And you're a video producer, and you find out about this really remarkable resource that it is amazing how quickly history how ephemeral it is. And you discover these stories, and your producer hat is activated.
Dr. Gillenow, it was his idea for me to produce this film. And what I've been doing for the last 12 years is interviewing young people in the town of Brookline, that is a very diverse community, and putting the interviews on the screen at this well-known nonprofit theater called the Coolidge Corner Theater. And he just felt my sense of humanity, and the fact that as a video producer, I guess you'd call it niche in that world, is the ability to interview people and get them to trust me, and then to produce videos, edited videos from those interviews. And
you just used a remarkable word, the hardest word to me when I watch this, and that's edited, because you begin with this mass of material, and you've got to carefully carve out these stories that people are telling about their lives. How did you go about doing that? That's a great responsibility.
Well, it was the first thing I had to do was build up the courage to watch them. I would say that took a couple of weeks. I fought with Dr. Gillenau to allow us, we had to get permission to take the tapes out of the closet because it was technically owned by the town of Brookline, Massachusetts. So they had to give us permission. But then when I got the permission, I had never heard a testimony before, and I didn't know what to expect. And these are very, very special testimonies. This is pre-Schindler's List. This was done at a time when no one had been listening to survivors for 45 years. And almost everyone that is in the film was speaking for the first time about what they had experienced, and their own family members didn't even know these stories. And so I didn't know what would happen to me if I would get lost in there somehow. And my wife and I borrowed what to us at the time was a ridiculous sum of money. We borrowed it from ourselves. And I put my business on part-time and took about 9 months to just live in the testimonies and watch them over and over again. And the first thing I had to do to put it together for a film is come up with criteria. And so the criteria I came up with was that it had to be first person testimony. And the other is it had to be what I felt that person came to say, that they were telling us about something that meant a lot to them. They were going to ask every question that Lawrence Langer asked them. But there's a reason why all of us agree to interviews, you know?
Yeah, yes.
You know, something that you're hoping you get asked a question that you could share what's in you. And I tried to study the tapes when a survivor, by their hand movements, facial expressions, if their face, you know, you can change your pigmentation in your face changes. They start talking with a different cadence.
Were there stories that stood out immediately as you watched that resonated with you in a way that you knew that would need to be in the film, however it took shape?
Yes. I knew that I had to find a way, because the film is told in chronological, semi-chronological order. So there's before the war, there's hostilities build, and, you know, ghettos, camps, you know, and then coming out of the Holocaust, that I had to find a way to take the viewer from, it's just really, really bad to be a Jew. You're being oppressed. You're not allowed to take certain jobs. You can't go to public places. You can't go to, it's humiliating to be Jewish. And to go from that to the Holocaust, to where you're actually talking about trying to wipe out your entire species. I had to take the viewer. So Rose Muir is her name, and she is in the film more than anyone else. And she tells the story about falling in love. And I felt that I needed her, that, I mean, her testimony was 7 hours long. Over multiple days. So out of the 7 hours, even though she's in it more than anyone else, she's still not in it a lot.
Yeah.
But at one point, and I'm changing the order the way it was in the testimony, but she talked about falling in love, and I really wanted the audience to be in her, and she's a very funny woman, and she's a one of a kind kind of person, and she could also speak for other people, but she could tell that story about falling in love, and so I wanted the viewer to be with her.
Mm-hmm.
And then she explains that they have to separate, and she never saw her husband again after they and explaining their last night together on this earth. And then from that moment, the pacing of the film changes, and it gets
And that must be personally difficult, even as a filmmaker who has some degree of distance in a way, as you put it together to sort of tell a story that such deeply personal stories being told, such emotion and grief being shared, but also a degree of resilience you see too, that the people are brave and strong enough these years later to finally speak about things they haven't spoken to your family. How did you manage that sense of responsibility? Did you speak with family members? Did you speak with those who gave the testimony as well?
The family members saved us.
Mm-hmm.
When I was making the film, it was hard for me to find someone who thought I was doing the right thing. In the sense that, I don't know, I mean, take whatever is an amount of money that would cause you and your family distress. Quit your job. I worked for myself, but I was basically not doing work for clients who could go to someone else so that I could make this. And putting us in a terrible position, you know, in our mind financially. And then, back in 1990, the Holocaust survivors, as witnesses, had signed release forms. And so I remember the town council for the town of Brookline, it's just like 60,000 people in Brookline. It's a fairly large place, small city, really. And I remember the attorneys for the town saying, well, they all signed release forms, so you don't really you have a right to do this. And I said, well, how do I find the people to tell them that their parents are going to be in a film? And they said, well, you don't need to find them. You have the right. And I didn't feel like I had the right unless the family members told me I had the right. Because anyway, we had a sheet of paper, which was all they could give us, which had 1988, the names and phone numbers and addresses for the people who were interviewed. And so none of those people were in those locations, and most of them had passed away. So while I was in my office setting up, I had two editors working on this, setting up the edits and everything. My wife on the weekends was researching on the internet to find the families so that I could call them. And they were the ones who embraced me. I thought that they were going to be like, well, you don't have the right to do that, or I don't know.
Did they know? Did you find most of them had even knew that this had occurred? Children or heirs, that they were aware that it existed?
Almost all of them knew about the testimony, but none of them were able to find where the testimonies were.
Oh.
They would call the town, imagine calling the city clerk and saying that my dad was interviewed 20 years ago, and they don't know what you're talking about. And then in one of the part where there's subtitles, that gentleman is Chaim, he's talking in Yiddish. And if you said, well, he was interviewed in Yiddish by the town of Brookline, that's what? So they had heard about it. Most of them have had very vivid memories of what their parents went through when they gave their testimony. It was a big deal that they were giving them. I heard about nightmares. It was very, very painful. But I was told by their descendants that their parents were very proud that they had done that. And the Coolidge Corner Theater main screening room holds 432 people. And so we rented it. And just with this thought that maybe we would sell enough tickets to make some sort of dent in the cost of the film. And if we didn't, then this was just important, and these people deserve to be in this important theater. But when I told there's the children of these people, not only did I was going to tell them, we put the tickets on sale for $25, and I said, it's $25 ticket, but if that's a hardship for you, then you're our guest. And not only did they do that, but checks started coming from everywhere, thousands and thousands of dollars, and beautiful letters.
How long did it take you to edit it, to get it to a place where you were comfortable to show it to an audience?
So January 27th, 2017, which is what at that time International Holocaust Remembrance Day, was the first time that a rough cut of the film had been shown. And we sold out the theater. It was all over the news and everything. And then to finish the film took until the end of 2019. And then we sold out a lot of screenings of it, and we were just heading into the most, months of screenings when we also were heading into the pandemic.
Oh. Well, let me ask you this too. You've talked a little about what resonated, with you in terms of things to include. Were there things that were very difficult not to include that were powerful, but in a way were more difficult to make a part of the overall piece?
Yeah. Yes. Well, first of all, these were all done in an access television station. And it was an access station that had gotten a lot of awards for being the top access station in the country. So it had all kinds of, it was an expensive studio, but you're still talking about volunteers or people who are in their first jobs in the video film industry, right out of college and stuff. And giving you an example, you have to set your microphone levels, your audio levels. Well, over the course of 6 years, this took all of the levels were set differently for every single interview. So it took a long time just to get it so that it didn't sound like one person was screaming while another person was whispering. And then there was a lot of decay in the footage. So a lot had to be repaired. And even to see it the way you see it took a lot of work with colorization and things like that. And just, it had to be restored, as well as edited together. So I'm sorry, I lost track of your.
Oh, no, that's fine. I was just curious if there was anything that stood out that you couldn't include, maybe for technical reasons. It was that you couldn't correct it in a way to.
Yeah, there were. One of the things that there was one person, Henry Lethman, and he was the person who was talking about walking after being liberated, and how he was walking and he decided that what he was going to do for the rest of his life was kill Germans, and because of what they had done to his family and so many others. And and then over the arc of this walk, which was probably days and days of walking, he decided that he couldn't do that. He couldn't hurt anyone. He couldn't, that's not who he was. And he couldn't make himself be that. There was one example. He was in a selection line where if you went left, you would be sent to work, hard labor, and if you went right, you would go right to the gas chambers. And he saw a mother she was selected to live, and her 8-year-old son was selected to die, or he thought the son was 8 years old. And these guards beat him to death. And the way nothing shows the horror more than that through his voice, but he was a very together person. His daughter said he was always like dressed to the nines, and he always he ended up being an engineer, and went to MIT, and so they couldn't get him through that section because he kept breaking down. And when they finally went back to him, and he had gotten himself to where he felt had been embarrassing himself. And which obviously he wasn't. You have to understand, or the one thing that I learned from this is that the survivors didn't cry during these testimonies. Only 2 did out of the 39 that I heard over these 90 hours. And so this part of the this part of it had been removed from them. And Henry was one of the 2 that did. And when he was finally felt together enough, Mr. Langer, he apologized for disrupting the interview. The survivor did. And then when Lawrence Langer asked him, I can't even believe that you could tell that story, never mind, because it was so awful. Never mind, trying to do it without shedding tears. And Henry yelled out, "I'm not crying because of the memories. I'm crying because I didn't do anything. I didn't save that boy." And I thought that was a very important thing to add, because it was showing one of the ways that these survivors had been, harmed, and that he felt guilt.
It's as we think about closing tonight, this is obviously a a labor of love and a commitment on your part to something much bigger than one film. What does it mean as the project evolved, as you became personally invested in it? And I don't mean just in terms of completing a film, but in the import of it. What do you hope to accomplish, and what do you want people to take away from this effort and from this film?
Well, one thing I want them to take away is that, the film isn't about that these people that you met, that it wasn't about them, that they survived. It was that people just as beautiful didn't. And I think, to me, I hope that it will help people listen more. I mean, I think that all these people wanted when they gave their testimony was for us to hear them.
Well, I think that's the beauty of this film, actually, is that it is their voices, and that it's pure in that way, and that we hear it directly without any intervening footage or narration.
I was just hoping to be a vessel for them.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I think that's a great way to close tonight, Harvey. Thank you again for being here. We are so appreciative that you would take the time. And it's always just fascinating to speak to the filmmaker about a film, especially one that's so important like this. Thanks for being here. We really do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
It's our honor. And we hope that everyone will think about attending a session tomorrow. We commence again at 10 o'clock in the morning and have afternoon sessions as well. So thank you again. And we look forward to seeing you and welcoming people tomorrow.
Thank you.
Good evening.